So today we're going to continue with our investigation of the world. As we said we were going to do, we're going to give some discussions on learning through putting the world under the microscope of Torah. And what we're really going to do with that is investigate how Torah looks at the world and all the mechanics of the world. And what I'm specifically looking at, or what I'm going to try and specifically look today, it's a question of the ethical or moral movements in the world. How does Torah consider what the world is sort of doing in terms of what it believes the values are? How does Torah relate to the values out there in the world? See, if you look at the world as basically a place of total rishus, there's nothing you can gain from the world outside of Torah, which would seem to be, let's say, the world of Canaan. Well, the response of Torah was very simple: destroy Canaan, destroy the Shiva of Ammon. Same with the concept of Malek, the idea that there's no real value there, so therefore we can destroy it. And that's pretty straightforward in the sense that we have Torah, we have the emes, we have the truth, we have the correct moral structure, and the world is really focusing upon what we would think to be negative drives, and the perception of Hamas, of violence, and overt sexuality, and the lack of caring for each other, and so forth. I mean, you think in terms of Midat Sdom, the attribute of the people of the city of Sdom, there was a tremendous amount of disinterest in other human beings. So it's very simple to say, hey, outside all they're interested in is physical pleasure or physical desire and so forth of that nature. And we've got Torah, we're going to develop the correct ethical, and we're going to follow the correct ethical structure. But the truth is, it might be an aspect of our success. It might actually be an aspect of our success, because one of the things we're supposed to do as the Am HaNivchar, as the chosen people, is to permeate the concept of God and the concept of what is correct in the eyes of God throughout the world. So to a certain extent, we have started to, where we've been somewhat successful. You know, you look in the world, the Rambam talks about how interesting Rambam, because it's a censored Rambam. You can't find the normal editions of Rambam, but people have seen it, and it was the non-censored Rambam. The Rambam says that why did God allow for the Nazarite and basically Jesus and Muhammad? And the Rambam's language is not exactly positive in that regard. He says, why did it allow them to get to exist? And he says, well, they served a purpose in spreading out the knowledge of Torah throughout the world. In other words, basically, the knowledge of the book was known throughout the world because of the Christians and the Muslims. So the truth is, some emes got out that way. So the point is that in a certain way, God wants the truth of Torah to permeate through the world. But the question then emerges, as they start developing these values, as they start even feeling these values or developing these values, the question is that what can we learn back from them? In addition to that, besides what they learn from the Bible, as let's say the terminology, what about what they learn from what we call natural morality? And the fact is, in using the Hebrew term mitzvot sifliot, mitzvot, commandments that come from our mind, which really are rational commandments, which the world has, and which the Rambam even refers to in terms that he thinks about the philosophers and what value do we gain from what the philosophers understood about ethics. He didn't just discount them totally. So the truth is when the world basically has no values whatsoever, nothing positive, we just dismiss it. But when the world starts working with some concepts of values and starts coming up with some ideas that perhaps have a place within a Torah perspective, or could have a place, or theoretically can be considered to have a place in a Torah perspective, how do we look at it? And that means through how they've been affected through the teachings they've gained from our Torah, and also from what we call natural morality. Now, we can basically say, well, whatever they gained from Torah or from the world, or whatever they gained, if it was good, we would have gained it anyways. If they were correct, we would have figured it out anyways. So that's one possibility. Okay, so they learn some things from Torah, and then they start talking about it, and they start doing ethical developments, analysis, and so forth. The truth is, anything they hit upon that happens to be correct, that we can learn from, that we theoretically could see and learn from, the fact is we could figure out on our own. That's one contention. Therefore, we don't have anything to learn from them, right? Because whatever they could possibly figure out, if they're really getting it from Torah, we could have figured it out on our own. That's one perception. And the fact is that in that one perception, there's some validity to it. But the point being, though, that there may be the fact that someone may come up with an idea that after they brought up the idea, we look at it and say, gee, that's an idea we should really consider. Okay, that's a perspective. The fact is that it's possible, yes, it's possible we could have figured everything out from Torah, and we could work out from Torah. We don't need whatever the outside world, the world outside of Torah. I'm not just thinking in terms of this non-Jewish world, but the whole world outside of Torah. Whatever they figure out, we can figure out. But the truth is, it's so vast. The Torah is so vast. Maybe they will hit upon something that we wouldn't have seen so simply from Torah. We would not have gotten there through Torah because we are still learning. We're still not totally devoted, and we don't have the full grasp of Torah. We can never have the full grasp of Torah. So that's a little bit of the tension within this perspective, in the sense that, maybe we can learn something. Now, this is a little bit of the issue when you talk about looking at secular studies and so forth, in the sense that there's one viewpoint that says anything of value in secular studies we could actually figure out from Torah itself, so what do you need secular studies for? Other people say, no, there's a vastness that we could gain from secular studies. The first argument being that we can gain that even if we could have figured out from Torah, who says we would have figured it out? Okay, because Torah is so vast, maybe if we hear that outside of Torah they came up with an idea, it can give us a shortcut to tell us, hey, maybe we should think of Torah this way. That's a tension in the thought. You can look at an interesting book of Shimon Schwab about this, called Elu Ve'elu. This is tension. And the reason it becomes a tension is because when something comes outside of Torah, from let's say the secular world, I think you try to say, gee, from this idea, I can read something into the Torah which I didn't figure out before. Are you basically imposing upon Torah something that's foreign to it? Or are you really saying, hey, listen, because of the vastness of Torah, here's an idea I may not have come to on my own, but now I do come to it now. That's an issue. The fact is, what it all comes down to is there a value in what's happening outside of the realm of Torah, of the world of Torah? Is there a value we could possibly learn from them or not? The fact is that the Gemara says something very interesting. Chachma begoyim tamin, Torah begoyim al tamin. Wisdom in the world you can believe, you can accept. Torah in the world you can't accept. It's a very powerful concept. What's the difference between Torah and Chachma? Wisdom and Torah thought. Fact is that Torah is built upon Chachma. We have the concept of the Svara. We have a concept we can develop through Svara, through analysis, through logic. God didn't have to speak to it at Sinai, at Revelation. Concept. If we could have figured this out without God telling us, why does God tell us things? So there's always an idea that Torah is superimposed upon a basic level of wisdom, and we can learn that level of wisdom from the world, from the non-Jewish world, but we cannot learn Torah. And what I would say is that what is really being said here is that what non-Jews develop, even non-Jews develop from logic, from analysis, from thought, that we can turn to. And that we can try and incorporate even in our Torah studies. Chachma Goyim Tamim. Because we can say, hey, listen, they got this idea, and they got it through analysis, and we can show the logic and so forth, and therefore we can now take that logic and consider it in our learning of Torah, in our analysis of Torah. However, Torah B'Goyim, when they say we have a revelation, we have some idea that we got from some vision, no, we can't accept that. Or we have some idea that we sort of feel it's correct, some mystical perspective, some revelational perspective. Al Tamim. No, that doesn't work. But the fact is by the Gemara saying that, we have an idea that Chacham B'Goyim Tamim. So we can turn to the world outside and gain some information from them in our own advancement of even Torah. The fact is, when you turn this into the world of morality, you have a very interesting concept as well. There's a medrash in I think the Sifri in Devarim the pasuk says V'asita yasher v'atov, you should do what is straight and good. And it says, they use both ways, Yasher v'tov, Tov v'yasher. The fact of the matter is, it says, Hayasher b'nei adam v'atov b'nei shemayim. Two different concepts, two different definitions of morality. What is right in the eyes of man, straight in the eyes of man, and what is tov, good, in the eyes of God. The fact is there's some moral analysis that can come out of the general study of life, philosophical ethics. There is something that comes out from the world that can actually have a voice that we are supposed to consider as we consider our own behavior. Hayasher b'nei adam, what is straight in the eyes of man, we are to consider it. But we also consider hatov b'nei shemayim, what is good in the eyes of God, which means that there's also an element here that's beyond human comprehension. Okay? The fact is you need both. You need the aspect of Yasher b'nei Adam and Tov b'nei Shemayim. What does this lead to? So the fact is that revelation, Har Sinai, was not given to a blank paper, to a blank white paper. Revelation, Har Sinai, was given over to human beings, specifically Klal Yisrael, who already had learning from Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, from all the Gedolim, Amram, up to Moshe Rabbeinu, all the knowledge that exists beforehand. It wasn't just a blank paper; they already had some knowledge. But the point is that revelation is set over to people who have some ethical perspective, first from svara, from analysis, from thought. The point being is that Torah speaks to individuals who are contemplating morality, their own knowledge of morality. Now, what happens in our world today, as the morality of Torah has been incorporated into a lot of secular morality, people talk about being good and caring for others and so forth and so forth. Where do you think they got it from? They got it from Torah. This whole universalist concept of being good. Love your neighbor as yourself. It's a Torah statement. The point is, the point is once these values have been incorporated into the non-Jewish world, into the general world, the analysis, the Chochmah analysis on it, can have value. And the question is how do we relate to that value? And it's that tension I said beforehand, where it has value but not total value. Hayasher b'nei adam v'atov b'nei shemayim. There's some value in man. You try and do what's straight in there, but ultimately tov, the answer God. What you do may not be totally accepted by the world. You have to try and balance it out. Tremendous amount of stuff on that. The point is, you will also see this in terms of the concept of Chacham B'Goyim Tamim, that the fact is you can consider their individual wisdom and so forth. And all this leads to an interesting question when you have moral developments in the world and how a Torah world should respond to moral developments. Examples: ecology. Big development concerning the morality of the world is environment now. Okay? Developed outside of the Torah. This value development is outside in the world. They're talking environment. They're talking about a responsibility to take care of the world. Okay? The question is, how does the Torah Jew look at it? So the point is that there are certain people who say, we don't really care about that. That's outside Torah. The fact is, you look in Torah itself, there are already concepts about being cared about the environment in Torah. Laws like Bal Tashlis, don't waste. A tremendous amount of aspects in Torah also about be careful about the environment. You go back to Adam Rishon, which was Shomer as a gun. He had to protect the garden. There's an idea of having some responsibility there. So therefore a person can simply respond and say, you know something? We don't need to learn anything from outside world because we could have figured it out already from Torah. Yeah. But you know what's interesting? What's interesting was the focus of people learning weren't on those mitzvahs. Because the outside world started saying, hey, there's this value, people said, hey, you know, so we got this value in Torah, but what happened is by looking at the outside world, these values in Torah got highlighted. And some people respond negatively to that because some involvement of the outside world at all sort of makes it feel that the Torah is lost, is being somewhat a lesson. The power of Torah is being messed. Other people say no. All that the outside world did was sharpen us and heighten us to see this value within Torah. Okay, that's perspective. You can say this with other examples as well, where there is a development of certain values outside in the general world. Some because they developed upon Torah concepts, some because of natural morality and so forth and so forth. And then you wonder how they voice back, how this concept voices back into the Torah world, because there's a concern that it could actually represent ideas that are foreign to this world or be imposed upon the Torah world when really it's not a Torah world. On the other hand, you begin to see that there is something about it that may be based in Torah. What I found though, is that when you take the outside world, what's happening outside the world, and you bring it into Torah, you find that the Torah changes it. What I find is Torah always has a uniqueness. And that's the thing I'm always concerned about. I look for what's happening in the world, and I look to say, hey, there's something happening. They're trying to develop certain moral concepts. And in a lot of ways, my first step is to say, does that moral voice that they're trying to develop have a voice within Torah? Possibly. Yeah. So I sit there and say, you know, saying broadly, it does. Such as ecology. Yeah, broadly, yeah. It does have a voice in Torah. But then I have to be very careful. When I try to incorporate that value into the Torah, I have to recognize that the Torah just doesn't accept that value just the way it is. It's like, hey, you got a value, bring it over. Yeah, we can incorporate it. No. Torah then takes that value and reshapes it. The Torah view of ecology, of the environment, is different than the secular view. The value was over there. We listened to the value. They made us focus on certain concepts within Torah. Maybe they gave us some insight into the ideas. There's some wisdom there. However, once it's involved in the realm of Torah, it changes a little bit. The Torah environmentalist is going to be different than the secular environmentalist. The Torah individual, for example, who's going to care about disabled individuals, is going to be different than the secular individual who cares about disabled individuals. The Torah individual who is concerned about learning disabilities is going to be different than the secular individual who's going to be concerned about learning disabilities. And I can go on and on with this idea. The fact is that the Torah does have a place for some voice from outside its realms. Hayasher b'nei Adam, okay, Chacham v'goyim tamim. Okay, Vasita Tiferes b'nei Adam, what is beautiful in the eyes of men. There's one idea. The very concept of Chilul Hashem. The idea that even if we do something that seems on the surface, or it seems technically, halachically to be acceptable, if the non-Jews have a very negative response to it, we still shouldn't do it, because it could be chilul Hashem. If they're going to have a negative viewpoint on individuals, then you have to be concerned about that. We have to deal more with the concept of chilul Hashem in the future. It's not so simple. But the point is that there is a voice of the outside world that can be incorporated into Torah. However, with caution. With caution, because you have to recognize that once it hits Torah, you have to make sure it is not just taken in totally the way it is. Like, hey, we can just fit it in and that's it, without, and we're on the same plane as everyone else. The Torah itself will cause a change in that concept. That's the very value of Har Sinai. That's the very concept of revelation. If people were able just to figure out morality on their own, of course, Baruch Hu just would have let morality develop on their own. Adam and Chava had the Eitz HaDas over us, so let's just go that way. The fact is that people were involved in trying to figure out moral and stuff like that. They're pretty weak at it at the time before Har Sinai, but true, but there was some striving for it. The point is that Har Sinai revelation, by coming down, says basically this is going to be unique. The moral individual who accepts Har Sinai accepts the revelation of Torah, even in the values where it seems that he's sharing with the secularists, with the other individual, there's going to be a change by the very divine aspect of Sinai being involved. And that's the challenge we have to look at in this world. We go out, there's a lot of moral aspects going out in the world, a lot of issues going out in the world, tremendous amount of issues. People aren't running off just trying to just do what we would call the most base drives. They're not just just interested in violence and just pleasure and stuff like that. The world seems to be interested in some moral development, this idea like environment and care for this and caring for your neighbor and caring for the homeless and stuff like that. For all values out there, it seems that there's something happening in the world that does have this aspect of values. But the fact is that those values can't just be dismissed, because obviously there's a value in them. But as Jews, we have to recognize, as Torah Jews, we have to recognize that as we look at those values and maybe get some insights from those values, we have to, when we put them into, when we look at them through the lens of Torah, when we put them into a Torah perspective, we have to understand how Torah will change those values, will restructure those values. And the way that if we incorporate those values will be will be in certain ways qualitatively different. And that's very, very important, because the fact is while Chacham B'goyim Tamim, we can accept a little bit of wisdom from them, Torah B'goyim Al Tamim, we cannot take it into as a Torah. And that really means is that in a certain way we can say to someone, thanks for the idea, but don't think you taught us this morality. The light of our morality must always come from Torah.